Well, hello again, everyone. And we're starting another adventure, this time with money. So you've probably watched the overview already. And today with part one, what we're just going to do is, what if this is the first time that we've introduced money to the students? And this is not about being a kindergarten student per se, although that's in their curriculum to be able to identify money. Any student who hasn't seen money or worked with money, and that could be all up to junior high, high school, would be in exactly the same starting place. So we want students to be able to know their money and not to spend 15, 20 seconds debating whether or not two nickels would make a dime. That should become quite fluent to them. And so just giving them lots of opportunities to play with the money, to work with the money. And by opportunities, we're not just saying to learn the names of the money. This is a tool. And hopefully by the time we're done all our different parts, you'll see how valuable money could be or is in teaching our math curriculum. So let's get started. Whenever you need to, just put your recording on pause so you've got time to get materials that you need. And it would be helpful if you have the play money for the students to have that out in front of you. So maybe just pause the video at this point, go grab that and have it available so that you can just follow along and just do it with me so that you get a sense too of how long it would take the students if you're introducing it to them for the first time as well. So the money that I see in front of me right now has no particular order to it, and that's really the good starting place for students. It doesn't matter whether they're brand new to school, kindergarten. You don't want to give them everything organized already. We want to know what they know about the money. I want to know if a grade 6 student knows anything about money. Do you hear the words and the names of money as they bring them forward? Or is it just a mad frenzy and just sort of getting things organized, but I still don't really know anything about the money? So starting off like this is a great way to do it. And the instructions that I would give to students would be simply to organize it in some way. Don't even use the word sort, because they should know that. And in kindergarten, they might not know that word, and some of them will. They'll say to you, "Oh, do you want us to sort?" I don't know. Is that what it means to organize? So we're not here to tell them. We're here to see what they know. So as they're sort of working, you're going to find that they'll sort in, and if they're absolutely brand new to this, they're going to sort them in not always the most obvious ways. So sometimes you'll find that students will take um, the silver ones, all the things that are silver, and put them into one particular pile, and they'll go from there. So I'm going to encourage you to, whatever handful of materials you have in front of you, to go ahead and just sort them out and put them into groups that make sense to you. And I'm going to make them based on the color that they are, the size that they happen to look the same. And you'll also have some conversations with students about, um, are these exactly the same? They look the same, they have some of the same things. And I'll just point it out to you right here. Here I've got two different nickels. They're from two different companies. They look a little bit different. They have exactly the same thing on them, but the kids are very quick to note that they're different sizes. So we usually say to them, just maybe have a look at what's on them. And if what is on them is identical, then we'll put them in the same group. So that kind of seems to solve the problem for us, and they work from there. And the grouping them into something that makes sense to them is a good conversation for you to have as you walk around the classroom, because then I can say to students, talk to me a little bit about why you put these ones together. Why did you put these ones together? And then as you hear students say, oh, that's a dime, you have a dime in a nickels group, then you can go over and say to them, I heard somebody say that they had a dime. Can you show me which one is the dime? And how did you know it was a dime? So again, you're already well underway in getting that identification. That's that formative assessment piece that you want to know who knows what. And some of them will know lots, and some of them will know very, very little. And the one that always sort of blows me away is how many students already know the pennies. And it's quite interesting that they know which one is a penny. And they'll tell you because it's the color. and they'll say it's 1 cent. And I often will say, how do you know that? Because we don't have those in our currency at the moment. And yet they're very familiar with it. So what you will find out is that many, many families have got pennies at home. They've been keeping them. They don't know what they're keeping them for anymore, but they have lots of them. So the students are quite familiar with the look of them and the value of them. That doesn't mean they understand what 1 cent is, but it does give them a pretty good sense of the fact that this is part of this whole grouping that goes together. So once they've done that, you want to find out who knows the names of them, who knows anything. And if I'm trying to get students to learn the names of them, I can combine that with very simple instructions of counting. Maybe I want to know who knows how to count to 3. And they're not really clear on the names of these. So I may start my entire instructions at the beginning for the first week or so with students saying, can you show me 2 of the same thing? That's a start right there. 2 of the same thing. Well, there's 2. I know that these are 2, 1, 2. Here's 2. There's 2. And then I can up it. Can you show me 3? Can you show me 4 of the same thing? And as students start to all become very familiar with, I'm going to show her 2 pennies. Well, all of us seem to be knowing the pennies. So from now on, class, I'm going to say that whenever I work with pennies, I'm going to name them. And if I name them, I want you to only use that coin. So again, I want you to show me 4 pennies, and then they grab 4. So you're talking about how do I count to 1, to 2, to 3, starting small, depending on the grade that you're in. I'm just going to start with the same thing. And if I don't have enough in my bag of the same thing, that's the first thing you'll hear is if I said, show me 10, and I wouldn't do that in the first bit, but let's just say I said, show me 10, because I don't have 10 loonies here. They might say, I don't have 10 of these. And then I might say, well, what are those? I don't know, but I don't have 10 of them. Then can you find me 10 of something that you do have? So it's just, again, you're not feeding them the name of the coin. You're letting the students tell you as they're learning them. But the end goal in kindergarten is that they're able to identify the coins and their distinguishing features. So their attribute of color, the size of them in comparison to others, what's on them. You have a loonie, you have the queen on the other side. We won't have any play money yet that has the king on it, but those are coming at some point. We have the caribou on our 25-cent piece, our quarter, the dime, the blue nose, and then obviously that we can use that as teachable moments too. What about the blue nose? What was so special about the blue nose? What is so special about this animal? So if I'm asking students to find me coins, I might say, can you find a coin that has an animal on it? Well, now they've got some possibilities. They could be giving me the nickel. They could be giving me the 25-cent piece. They could be giving me a loonie. And then I might even go a little bit further and say, I'd like you to find one that has an animal with a big flat tail on it. So now I'm just getting to, do they even know a beaver? Do they know a beaver when they see a beaver? And that some of them will say, that's a beaver. She wants the beaver. What do we know about a beaver? So as we teach them about the attributes that are on here and the names of it, we also can use those as teachable moments about what do we see on them as well. And really have them examine a coin and really have them learn that every coin has its name on it, that it says 5 cents on it. And so we need to talk about what is a cent. And that's a tough one for them. What is a cent? So we might say that I need to show you what a cent is in comparison to how many I need for one of these coins right here called a nickel. So it would take 5 of these pennies to make one of these nickels. So every time I have 5 of these, instead of walking around with those in my hand, I could make a trade and get one of those. So I'm going to trade 5 of those for these. So you can see how we start to move to that. There is no rush to start trading. I need to know them. I need to know them well. I need to know how much they're worth first. And then I can put the context of what 100 cents looks like. How does 5 cents fit into this? How do 10 pennies fit into a dime? How do 2 nickels become a dime? Just very simple trades. Okay, we're just trading. And that's really the beginning pieces of regrouping and converting. When converting this to this, So I'm trading this for this. And that's really where we end up going when we're adding and subtracting numbers. We're regrouping, we're borrowing. How are we borrowing? If children don't understand regrouping and borrowing, it's because they really had no concept of what those numbers represent. So instead of showing me that routine, that algorithm of how I borrow something, I'm going to do it just with money first. Money's powerful. And I'm going to sort of lay out right up front. Money has some advantages that the base 10 blocks don't. Base 10 blocks are great, and don't get me wrong, I would still use them, but I would only use base 10 blocks after they're fully proficient with money. They've been using money to add and subtract. They've been using money for decimals, all of those pieces. Then I might bring out the base 10 blocks, because a base 10 blocks has a limit. I can do the ones, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands, but if I want to get into decimals, I have to teach you to rethink the values of familiar shaped rods already. So I'm going to take my flat and change it to a 1. I'm going to take my rod and change it to a 10th. That is extremely abstract and very confusing for children. And a lot of children who really don't understand base 10 blocks, the lack of understanding comes in the fact that you told me this little square you called a unit is 10 of those can make a rod. And I can show you that they do. That's not a problem. But who cares about a rod? Like, what is a rod? Well, a rod is really this right here. It's a dime. There's a rod. It's a dime. Or it's a $10 bill. So in the world of money, it's real. In the world of base 10 blocks, it's abstract thinking. And that's deep abstract thinking. For you to make me think that I should know that a rod has 10 value of 10 in it, abstractly 10 something. So you're getting the idea of how we need to introduce money to them. And it can be all kinds of games here. You could play bingo. There's lots of bingos where, you know, under the end, or you have to get a straight line, and I've got a loonie, and you get to put your loonie marker wherever it is and get your straight line that way. You could do memory, put there's memory cards. So a lot of that stuff is already created for you. The games have already been done. So those are available if students need to learn them. And any student who doesn't know money needs to go there. This has nothing to do with age. Okay, so those are the basic pieces that we want to start with. Now, we don't want to forget the bills. And so once I'm pretty good at identifying the coins, the value of the coins, and just by name, really quickly by sight, that I can tell you something about them. I also want to know the bills. And the bills are easier in the sense that they have the denominations on them. But we still want students to explore what's on a bill, especially in kindergarten. What do they say? What are some things that are on there? And then what's the color of each bill? Because to be truthful, most of us as adults, if you reach in for a 20, you're looking for something green in your wallet. You've already color coded the denomination. And that's why using money to teach students the Canadian money, we need to use something that looks relatively authentic. If we just give them a square or a rectangular box with black and white with a 20 on it, that's not going to help me understand the money in Canadian terms, in the sense that we are so linked to color. So knowing those values of the bills is also important. And then as I get older in grade 1, I'm doing much more than just identifying. I'm now going to be using those where I can add and I can do some regrouping. Can I do some of that in kindergarten? You bet I can, because I got to be able to add to 10 at some point in kindergarten. Not that we're looking for major equations, but they are doing basic things such as 5 and 5 is 10. And I could use my money to do those types of things. So again, if I'm just starting off, I could easily ask students to show me 2 of something, 3 of something, show me 5 pennies, show me 2 nickels, right? That kind of quick response so that we're getting the sense of what that is. And eventually we want to get to, can you show me some other way of representing this coin right here, the nickel? And there aren't too many options there. I could put 5 pennies out and that would give me a representation. But what if the question was, could you give me a representation for this coin, the dime? Well, then I could go something like this. I could go like this. I could go 2 nickels, etc. But we want students to be able to come up with different possibilities for different values and recognize that there will be certain limitations depending on the coin that I use that will allow me to put different combinations together. The bigger the number, the bigger the combinations I have. So if I were to get something like the question was, can you show me combinations, assuming I'm ready to go to that height, of a 25-cent piece, I could count out 25 ones for you. There's nothing wrong with that. That'd be correct. I might say to them, that's a lot of pennies, and that would be a lot to carry around. So what else could you do? Well, if I've already learned that I can skip count by fives, then I could use my 5 nickels. I don't know if I have enough out here on mine. No, I don't. Yes, I do. So I could do my 5 nickels, or I could do a dime and 3 nickels, etc. But we want students to really explore different ways of putting money together so that they don't believe that the only way that I can see 25 cents is through a quarter. Now, there is the word efficient that I use, and you've probably heard me use that in other terms as well. Efficient means what's the least number of coins that you could use to make this? So being efficient, well, 25 cents, that's efficient. Use the quarter. But what if I said you couldn't use the quarter? What's the most efficient way that you could show me a 25-cent piece? Well, the most efficient way would be giving me 2 dimes and 1 nickel. Anything else after that that adds up to 25 is still correct, but it's not the most efficient, least number of coins possible. So we want to eventually get them to this so that you're not always having a student count out by ones. And at some point, you want to keep track of who is the child who's only ever counting out by ones. They don't go anywhere else. So they're not grasping yet the value and how they can understand how that value can connect to different coins that are on the table. So then same thing. I can say, what are ways that you could make a loonie for $1? And again, lots of different possibilities. Anything that adds up to 100 or $1 is going to be correct. Then if I say, I'd like you to be efficient, then depending on what they have on the table, they'll show you whatever they can that's been, so 4 quarters might be the most efficient that they have. But if they don't have 4 quarters, then what do they have to build with? So getting students to do that all the way up to grade 6. What you don't want to do is have a 15, 20 minutes, 20-second delay about this is $1. Okay, they need to really be able to do that quickly. Now, I've been saying cents, and I just said dollars. So initially, you need to decide, are you going to work with 100 cents? So this being your ultimate 100, or are you going to work in dollars? So if you're going to work in dollars, then this becomes your 1, and then you're using your bills from there on in. So where are you going to start with? And that will depend too on the grade that you're teaching and what the end goal is. So even kindergartens can do 1 loonie plus 1 loonie is how many? That's 2. What if I add another one? That's 3, and so on. I could also use these as a part whole. And often when I say part whole, a lot of teachers say, oh, that's pretty kindergartenish, pretty grade 1. And I would argue with you that that maybe isn't the case. This could be any grade, because I could use this for a grade 12 student on anything I'm teaching them that I can break up, whether it be equations, whether it be polynomials. So this part whole is not something that's just for a younger grade. But I could start off with something like, I have this many pieces of 1 cent, sorry, I have this many pennies in my whole, and one part was here. So my base is moving here. There we are. So one is here. What's the other part that I'm missing? And there's lots of ways that you can show students to do that. You can say, well, you already used those 2 of the whole. So here's what's missing over here. And how can I check that? I can count them. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. So again, that part whole is another way for us to do our initial sentences, our number sentences. But don't kid yourself. This could be a really good one for grade 4, 5, 6. What if I put a $5 bill and 27 cents up here? And I put a toonie and a dime here. What's missing? So you can up this to whatever grade they're in. And remember, by the time they get to grade 4, they're already doing decimal numbers of tenths and hundredths. So the money should be secondary to them at that point. And by the time they get to that grade, we've already been talking dollars and cents to them, not decimals, dollars and cents. So that's an important piece. Okay, so that gives you a starting point that we can sort of work from. We also want to acknowledge that these coins offer us a lot of other opportunities, such as here I can skip count by 2s with the toonies. So if I have to skip count by 2s to 20 and backwards, here I can use my toonies for that. If I'm going to skip count by 10s, I can use my dimes. And I'm going to use that before I give them a number line, before I give them, just put the money in front of them and make that work so that they become so proficient. And then we bring a number line out. The money should always be available and they can always see the money, but they're going to use a number line and they can see, where would I put a nickel? Oh, there's my first nickel. I'm going to count by 5s. There's my second nickel. I'm going to count by 10s, my third nickel, and so on. So I can introduce multiple different strategies for skip counting. I could then bring out having the money right here, still sitting there and skip counting by 5s. I've got my number line. We did that one. Now I'm going to bring out my hundreds chart. So all of them stacked side by side. So students see the connection between each one, and they're not just learning one of them, but they can move from one fluidly to the other. The money is really, really powerful. And kids love the money. You will have zero problems keeping them engaged because they think this is fantastic that they have all these money in front of them. All right, now, so I can use that for skip counting, which eventually then I can also start turning into multiplication tables, which we won't talk about at this point. So hopefully that just gives you a starting point for the money. Remember too that when you're skip counting, you also have your bills that you can be using for skip counting. So for the 5s and 10s. So lots of different places for me to be able to do that. And I can also say, you know, I could do a greater than less than. Which amount is greater than, or which is larger, which is smaller. Use your greater than less than symbol. You could put which ones are greater than less than or the same. So having that comparative language conversation, and then just bumping it up as I start to be able to add things together. If I have 2 of these and 2 of these, which is greater, which is less? And if they're old enough to be able to figure out by how much, then go ahead. But really, all you want to do is comparative language. Which is more, which is less? 2 bills in both sides, are they the same? What happens if I went like this? So notice the different places. Because they're in different places, a lot of students will say they are different. So that's where we have to get into that conversation of, maybe we look at when I have 10, now I'm going to add 5 to it. So again, you could use your Cuisenaire rods. You could use the money, count them out here and show me I've got 10 loonies and another 5 loonies. I could do 5 loonies and 10 loonies, and now do I end up with the same thing? So modeling, letting me try it out to show me that I'd made a correct answer or an incorrect answer, rather than simply telling me. Just gives them not only the grounding they need in the money, but it also helps us mathematically get those foundations together that we need. Okay, so when we come to the next section, we're going to look at actually dividing them up a little bit more into place value. So we're going to assume we've got the money and we know that the different values exist. We know where they belong. We know how to compare them. We can do some basic trades of 5 pennies for nickels, 2 nickels for a dime, maybe 10 dimes for a loonie. That kind of basic trade has already been working. And you're going to keep practicing that. This is not done by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, we'll see you in part 2.